Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. So today we continue to study about the life of the Buddha. So last time we learned about how the Buddha attained enlightenment, how he spent 7 weeks after his enlightenment at the Buddha trees which protect him during his meditation practice, and how a celestial king went down to request the Buddha turn the Dhamma wheel, has been teach other sentient beings about his awakening path. And of course, after his acceptance of that request, he contemplate who were qualified to learn from his teachings. So first, he used his psychic power to contemplate for those people, but somehow he found out his former teachers get passed away, and the only ones that could understand his teachings uh, are the first 5 companions, the one left him while he tried to go to the middle path, because they thought that he gave up his spiritual practice and went back to the mundane life. So after his observation, he went to the deep park that's here from Gaia or Buddhi Gaya nowadays. So he walked from this place to Isipatana or deep park to see those 5 companions so that he could deliver his first teaching to them. So when he went there, somehow they have decided each other that they would not pay attention about him at all, because they told each other that he gave up the spiritual path. There's no way for them to serve him like before. But somehow, because of his virtue and power of enlightenment, so when he approached to them, um, they soon forgot what they had said to each other before and ran to him to take the bow and the ropes, um, as well as prepare the cushion for him to sit, uh, so that they could listen to his teaching. So after the Buddha sat down, he told them that, I have attained the ultimate truth of Nirvana. Um, so I want to let you know what it's about. If you learn and follow my teaching accordingly, you will soon uh, be enlightened like me. So the only thing I'm going to tell you uh, is the truth, that you can attain by yourself. So because of his compassion, and that's why he wants to share his own experience with these first 2 or 5 Buddhist monks um, about these foremost teachings. Uh, so that's why he reminded them that um, the thing I'm going to tell you is the truth. If you trust me and follow my teaching, you will attain that state of mind, nirvana state of mind. Again, we will cover what's the meaning of nirvana later on, but in general, That is state of mind, not the place like the heaven, not like somewhere else in the universe. But that's a state of mind. The state that go beyond reach anger or any emotional fluctuations like we have nowadays, stress, anxiety, depressions, worriness, and so forth. So anyone uh, attains this state of mind, what we call the nirvana state of mind. So they free from any mental afflictions. They don't have any more uh, stress, anxiety, depression, and so forth. So that state of mind can be attainable if we follow the Buddha guidelines. And here he reminds them that they need to pay attention on this special teaching. So here the scenes at the deep parts, that's where the Buddha attend. That's where the Buddha first gave teachings to these five former companions. And of course, later on, they would become the first Buddhist monks ever, and that's from the Buddhist Sangha or the monastic communities. So here is the place Sanat. That's where the Buddha gave first teaching to the first five students. And up to that, he remind them again that did I ever tell you about this before? Did I ever admit that I have found the ultimate truth? So definitely after that, um, five of them were convinced by the Buddha's speech and start to accept whichever teaching the Buddha provide to them. Because, of course, before he didn't mention anything about the ultimate truth that he had attended uh, when he practiced what we call self-torture or ascetic practice. But now, after he followed the middle way, he have attained that state of mind. So, so that actually that was the times it occurred in the second full moon night of July 528 BCE. This also marked the beginnings of the rainy season at the deer park. So later on, they built the stupa to commemorate the place where the Buddha first spent the first rainy season with his first students and where he first provide the first teaching and what we call Dhamma Kaya Pravatana Sutta. And that is mean that uh, uh, the setting in motion of the wheel of the Dharma Sutta or the propagation of the law, Sutta or Sutra in Sanskrit. So, like if we somehow discover something, definitely with the sincere mind, we would share with other people the most important factors or aspects of things that we have discovered. So did the Buddha. So the first ever teaching that's so important after his enlightenment uh, were spoken, explained by the Buddha in this special sutra or teaching, and it cover some topic like the Buddha remind them to stay away from two extremes. The extremes of indulge in uh, the the desire or cravings, uh, or luxury life, like his life before he gave up that life to become a hermit, to seek for the ultimate truth. And the other extreme is to torture the body with the ascetic practice. So one extreme that indulge ourselves, that we could not pay much attention about our spiritual path or practice. Another extreme, it just torture this body, that there's no way for us to have the strength to work on the spiritual path. And that's why he gave up both of them. Um, the life of indulgence in the luxury lives as a prince before, and other lives is to torture the body as an ascetic hermit. So he remind them to stay away from those extremes uh, that could help them to attain enlightenment. That's why what we call the middle way, the Noble Eightfold Path, and he spoke about the Four Noble Truths, the 12 insights, and he proclaims the release from the birth. And later on, Kodana, uh, one of the five disciples, attained uh, enlightenment, the first stage of arahantship, and later on he and others attain the fourth stage of arahantship. So uh, after that, some devas or celestial beings proclaims about the Buddha setting of the wheel of Dharma's emotion. As mean they recognize the Buddha turn the Dharma wheel, or first gave the teachings to the first 5 months. So actually, the Buddha not only taught these first 5 months, but also all sentient beings, especially celestial beings of Bodhisattva, who have ability to understand uh, his teaching. So let's go back to discuss some basic teachings that the Buddha first provide to his first five disciples. Uh, the first one, what they call the uh, nature of suffering, or the truth of suffering. Um, to live is to suffer. Actually, that's life. We have all kind of uh, these sufferings, physically and mentally. Physically, we were born, we get in older, we have some kind of illness, we pass away. That is the concept of life, regardless of our belief, gender, race, and so forth. So it's happened to every one of us, or even to animal beings. Um, we could see and recognize there's no exception, and that's life, and that is related to our physical beings, our physical suffering. So let me play the first video clips that talk about the Asian problems in America. Okay, so you see that um, so the rise of the Asian Americans in nursing home, uh, especially up till World War II, uh, especially during this 21st century. So many elderly people need that care at the nursing home. So basically, again, that's the natural state of life. There's no one could escape from. So we were born, we get in older, we have all kind of illness and pass away. So that is the way that we have to endure or encounter. There's no exception. So there's no medicine that could prevent us from aging, that could prevent us from dying. So that's why the Buddha gave the knowledge that we are on the train, and some of us have arrived to the destination, and some of us almost get there, and some of us are in halfway, or some of us just started. So the one got there, that's mean they done with this life on earth, and the one that almost get there, that's like elderly people, or the one in the two-third ways or halfway is like us, like the middle-aged people, and the one just started, like the young one, and so forth. So regardless of the race, genders, nationalities, or faith, one way and others, we get there. So mm, that's why even we want to live forever, there is no way for us to have that kind of life. So that's reality of life physically, and not talking about during our lifetime. We have all kind of illnesses. Of course, uh, in our daily life, we may have some kind of stomach problems, headache, chest pain, and so forth. So discomfort for us to have those type of illnesses. Not talking about when we have some kind of terminal illnesses like cancer, heart attack, and so forth. So again, we have to deal with that capillary. So some people that may not understand the reason why the Buddha spell out this kind of problems, and they say that Buddhism is so pessimistic that talk about sufferance. But again, the Buddha point out the problems uh, for us to recognize. Mm, he's like a doctor. When we visit doctor office, of course, doctor would point out what type of problems physically and mentally we have, and later on he would remind us the reason why we have the type of illness. And for example, if we have stomach, uh, he will remind us that yes, you have that kind of stomach problems, and he may remind us that the reason why we have stomach problems probably because we have eaten wrong food or spoiled food. So that's why we have that type of stomach. And of course, if we um, walk away from him, there's no way for us to be recovered from that kind of illness. And if he stopped from that point, we will not pay for him. We will not need to pay for his visit. If we move further, yeah, we can overcome that kind of illness, the stomach ache illness. And that's the third stage. And the last day he said, well, if you follow my prescription and take my medicine, you would get better. You would not have any kind of stomach anymore. So there's the Buddha. So at first, he point out what's the problems that we have in life, physically, mentally. Like I just showed you, physically we have to endure aging, illness, and death. That is prevalent. That happen to every one of us, no exception. And later on, he laid out the reason why we have that kind of problems, that type of reincarnations. Uh, the Buddha said that caused by desire or by anger. Of course, for the symptoms for the first noble truth, the nature of suffering, he also mentioned about the physical sufferings of aging, illness, and death, as well as the mental sufferings, mental depression, like our stress, anxiety, depression, and so forth. So the second part, he mentioned that the root of the problems are the desire, the anger, uh, the stability that we will learn later on. So the Buddha point out the problems and the reason or the cause of problem, and later on he say, well, those kind of problems and disease can be transformed. And if you trust me, follow my prescription, you can overcome or transform that types of disease or sufferings by yourself, by follow what you call the noble eightfold path. That's a solution for the sufferings. Again, we can watch the video clips that explain how elderly people in this country spend their times um, in the nursing home. Of course, depend upon their blessing. They would stay in certain types of nursing home that would take care of them. But that's not important. The important is that no matter how long we live, one day we have to go. And of course, when we're up to above 100 year old, there's no medicine, no doctor, nurses could help us to sustain this physical body because of the nature of life. But mentally, we can transform ourselves, whether we are young or old, male or female. So, with that kind of understanding, we have the ability or the power to transform ourselves for better. So, in one analysis, the Buddha said that we receive two arrows. The first arrow is symbolize the physical sufferings of aging, illness, and death. That is the first arrow. And the second arrow is if we don't know how to handle, that's related to mental afflictions of stress, anxiety, depressions. And so, for the physical sufferings, for the first arrow, of course, there's no way for us to change it as long as we have this physical body. But for the second arrows, for the mental afflictions, we have the power, our ability to transform those sufferings that we will going to discuss later on. Okay, so in that first teaching, the Buddha laid out that kind of path for us to follow. Here, the true suffering, the cause suffering, the cessation of sufferings, and the path to end the suffering. And let me skip this. This is the first noble truth. Okay. So here, the true sufferings that relate to the physical suffering, the spiritual suffering, the economic suffering, and other sufferings that relate to our life. Again, um, Buddha was not pessimistic person. He just reminds us that we need to recognize and accept this kind of reality. We can may run away from those varieties, but still it's there in front of us. Whether we want to face with it or we want to run away, it's still there. For example, uh, if uh, we have some kind of again stomach ache problems, we have to face with that. That's the problems that we have with our body. If we try to run away from it, there's no way. It's still there. Or even when we get older, eventually we may need to be taken care of by our family members, or if we don't have them to care for us, we may head to a nursing home. So that's the reality of life. No one can escape from, whether we pay attention or not. So for the Buddhas, again, he served as doctors that remind us this kind of this suffering that we are doing in every second of our life. And of course, for the truth of the cause of suffering, so the Buddha mentions the suffering based on the principle of varieties of all existence and the laws of the 12 causes. And that means the 12 conditions are basically it relate to the ignorance, the craving, and the anger that we have, or in general, the mental affliction that cause us to have mental sufferings. And of course, he provide the path, he comfort that those of suffering can be transformed. Um, Suffering can be transformed to happiness if we know how to transform. Otherwise, happiness can be transformed into suffering, depend upon how we maintain our state of mind. Of course, the last one, the truth of path, the path that leads to that kind of cessation, that kind of ending of suffering. We talk about that. Here, the first noble truth. So we have birth, Asian, death. So that's related to this physical body, sorrow, lamentation, pain, distress, despair, associated with the love, separation from the loved one, not getting what we want. So those are the mental sufferings, mental dissatisfactions that we could not get much satisfactions about ourselves when things come against our will, when we have some kind of illnesses, when we have some kind of lamentation, stress, distress, when we stay away from our lovely one, when we deal with what we call enemies, are the one that we don't want to see, but they um, still around with us. So those are the mental suffering that we have to deal uh, in every instant of our life. So that what we call the first noble truth, or the noble truth of sufferings or stresses. Let me show you another video clips that relate to what we call stress in the modern term, the anxieties or the mental suffering that the Buddha mentions in his first teaching. Okay, so you see that uh, with the stress is um, may affect to our physical body that we could not have any kind of peacefulness. So that's why we need to recognize that kind of mental and this suppression that we deal in our lives. So as long as we have that kind of mental fluctuations of stress, anxieties, and depressions, there's no way for us to have the peacefulness and happiness. And again, as long as we recognize them, we could mm, find a way how to deal with them. So that's why the Buddha point out that we need to recognize them at first, whether we want to run away or face them or not. That's the reality that we need to recognize. Right, so let's say during the day we go out to work for other people or even run up on business. When we deal with people, let's say the customers or our supervisor, if they give us hard times, let's say the customer they so picky, or even they may criticize the way that we run our business or the way that we treat them uh, in the nasty way. Yes, it will bring the sufferings or bring the distresses to our mind. But again, we have a choice whether to let that stress invade our well-beings, or we can control and transform them so that we can remain at peace within ourselves. So let's say if they give us some kind of bad comments about how we treat them, how we run our business, and if that's true, let's say somehow we have not treated them well, and they provide that kind of bad comments. So again, we may accept that type of comments and change for better. If we try our best to treat them well, but they still give that bad comments about our treatment toward them, we know that there's some problem within themselves. They have to fix by themselves. So we uh, have that kind of confidence in ourselves, and so that's the problems. We don't need to pay attention much. So again, the point is that if someone give us some criticism, um, if that's criticism is proper, we can change for better. We can use that kind of bad comments as stimulations for us to change how we deal with them. Uh, but if they give bad comments because of jealousy, or because of angers, or whichever, that's their problems. So again, with that type of wisdom and understanding, much easier for us to deal with life or other people. Otherwise, if we don't know how, we would mm, stress out much easier. And of course, later on, we will talk about what we call the mental discipline, mental exercise, and that's related to what we call meditations. As long as we maintain the concentrations or mindfulness practice, uh, it's much easier for us to deal with those mental afflictions. So before we move on, I like to show you the video clips that summarize what we learned from the times that the Buddha decided that he would give the first teachings to the first five monks until the times that he provide this kind of teaching. So again, let me show you that type of video clips for you to mm, understand clearly about how the Buddha decided to give the first teachings. Okay, in these short video clips. Anyway, so this is short video clips that about uh, the ordinations of the first five Buddhist monks, the one who have attained enlightenment or arahantship, right after they listen to the first sermon, the teachings of the Buddhas, the Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Paths, and so forth. So let us stop here today. So next time we will discuss further about the second uh, Noble Truth and so forth. Namo Shaka Muni Buddha. We'll see you then.